We're now going to take a look at the Grimm MU1 Digital Streamer. Ultimate Streamer, the first dealership here in the UK to offer this product, and we're delighted to be launching it to the UK market here tonight. We're going to start off by talking technically about the Grimm MU1, and I'm delighted to be joined by Guido and Eelco Grimm from Grimm Audio, who've both been with the company since its formation 16 years ago in 2004.
Hi.
Hi guys, and welcome to the show. I guess the MU1 was a pretty big project for you. Was it one that required a lot of software development?
That's right. There's software in most of our products. Started with the CC1, where the PLL also needed software, and then of course the LS1 loudspeaker had quite a lot of software, but none of those products had so much software as the MU1, because there's, I think, at least 3 different types of programs or platforms inside that needs software. So first of all, the CPU, we run a Linux system on that CPU. That's totally of our own specification. We developed upon a TinyOS Linux platform. So it's a very optimized platform that's in full control by our engineers. And then on that platform, there's a Room Labs that we use for the user interface that runs on that CPU, but you needed lots of software to optimize that, and that connects then to an ALSA driver, which is really interface for Linux to connect to the outside world. And the outside world in our case is an FPGA chip, field programmable gated array. It's a mouthful, but it offers us a huge processing power for doing, in our case, up and down sampling and the necessary filtering in that case. And of course, that asks for lots of software as well. And then there's a controller on that same board as well that needs, again, different software. So yeah, indeed, there was a lot of software to write to get this thing rolling. It was a huge endeavor, and we started this because we knew that if we would just adopt a generic board from one of the possible suppliers, we would not be in control over everything that goes on inside. And then we would not be able to offer anything different from all the other vendors. And well, that's not the Grimm style, so to say. So we had no other choice than to dive into this whole project and work on it for years. And now we managed to have a real interesting, complete solution that offers us and our users lots of opportunities for integration with systems.
For those people who are into streaming, the MU1 is both a Roon core and a Roon endpoint device. Why did you decide to partner with Roon when you were developing the MU1?
Well, I checked out quite a few platforms for streaming in a home situation, because there's also audio over network in professional audio situations. But we're looking now at the living room where you can have streams from the internet, but also local streams from a NAS or wherever you store your audio data. And the main thing with all these platforms is that maybe they can sound well, maybe they can offer bit perfect transport of all the audio data into your DAC, or in our case the FPGA board, but the experience is really that the thing that you hold in your hand when you're sitting on the couch, and that's probably your tablet, in my case an iPad. And if that's a very Spartanic experience, it doesn't really appeal to play around in your library and to add new music to it, etc. So when I discovered Rune, it was clear that they had real good ideas about the user interfacing. And then, of course, it was important for us to learn what they were doing to have the audio quality preserved. And we did tests for bit perfect transport on Rune, and from our tests that turned out great, no problem at all.
And for the MU1, you chose AES EBU as an output over USB or SPDIF. Why was that choice?
If you look at the interface format that has been set in the last decennia, then that it's a very traditional interface from source to converter, which is adopted, and as a manufacturer, you're kind of obliged to follow that interface. Now, the USB interface has been adopted as an audio interface as well, but it has a clear limitation compared to the AES interface. So we could choose both, but the clear advantage of AES is that by lowering the jitter on the AES data stream, the following converter benefits in terms of playback quality, because the conversion clock in the DA converter is derived from the AES data stream. And the lower the jitter on the stream, the lower the conversion clock jitter in the DAC. There's very few DACs on the market that have such a good PLL and oscillator circuit that they're, say, immune for their incoming data stream. I haven't found them, and I know of some manufacturers that they are doing a lot of work to make their DAC immune, and there's good examples of those, but still, if you improve the source jitter, all following DACs will benefit in terms of playback quality.
And you can't do that with USB or SPDIF, I guess.
Exactly, because USB audio is not having the clock quality incorporated in the transfer of the audio data.
And quality digital audio is all about timing and jitter and the control of that anyway, isn't it?
At the moment of conversion, yes. Then jitter is the only thing that counts, because then you're actually translating time to amplitude or the other way around. And we've identified that as one of the very sensitive parts of designing digital equipment. Moreover, designing AD or DA converters. So what we're actually doing is we help the external converter, regardless of that being the ones that are incorporated in the LS1 system or another third-party converter. They all benefit. Some do benefit more than others, but there's never a downside of this technology.
Okay. I can remember back in the, I think it was early 80s, was it 83? I think CD was bought out. I remember going and buying my first Sony CDP 101, which I think was one of the first CD players. I think you could only buy Dire Straits, Love Over Gold, Vivaldi, Four Seasons, Roxy Music's Avalon, maybe a Beethoven.
Yeah, the famous Beethoven.
And of course, they were just standard 44 16-bit technology. Over the past few decades, we've seen a lot more sampling rates. What sample rates do you support with the MU1, and does the unit actually upsample?
Looking back at CD, and I recall that memory that you have, what I liked about the very first CD players that I heard was the very stable pitch of a piano, for instance. And I disliked most of all the other so-called quality aspects of it. And after 30 or 40 years, we now know on a technical basis where the thing flawed. Actually, the first few generations of CD players flawed. The whole challenge of this ball game, and the MU1 is in the same game, is being able to design such that all those digital and analog and mechanical and whatever circuits you have combined work nicely together without interference. And once you're on that level, we think that even the standard Redbook CD can sound very decent.
You could see that the actual DAC element was not running at the same data sample rate as the format. The CD format was 44.1, it still is, but the internal DAC ran at a higher frequency. And that was done because they could then use digital filters to remove the high frequency images that digital audio offers. And this turned out to be a better choice than trying to do the same with analog filters, like in the Sony early CD players, because steep analog filters offer all kinds of problems with the phase response of the whole system. But you could also say that the first Philips units internally was already high-res. It was running at 176.4 kilohertz internally, the DAC element. And then internally, of course, there had to be a digital conversion taking place from the incoming 44.1 kilohertz stream to 176.4, where the DAC was running at. Now, what we discovered when we were developing the plans for the MU1 is that digital process, that digital conversion process, that's still part of almost every single DA converter out there, has to be done at a much higher performance level than most people ever imagined. And that when you start improving the precision of that filter, you enter whole new adventures where you discover that going further than you were still offers an audible improvement. And so we ended up in the MU1 with a very powerful FPGA that's connected to the CPU board that upsamples all incoming Redbook style 44.1 formats to the 176.4 because that's the maximum frequency that the AES-EDU output supports. And by doing so, we offer a relief to the connected DACs because the first steps from going up from the base rate of 44.1 to 4 times that base rate, which is the 176.4, that's the most demanding part. So as soon as your DAC receives a 176.4 stream, his internal filters have an easier job to do.
Well, look, Guido and Eelco, thank you very much for joining me today. It's been great to meet you both. We're going to talk to Jason in a minute, and I guess we're going to find out whether the MU1's going to win an award or not. So
who knows?
It was a pleasure, Steve.
Carry on watching. So I'm now delighted to be joined by professional reviewer Jason Kennedy. Jason has been reviewing audio products since 1987 when he joined Hi-Fi Choice magazine. He then went on to become the magazine's editor, a position he held until he left in 2001. Since then, he's been a regular contributor to a number of audio publications and now runs his own online review website, The Ear. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, it's good to be here.
So, Jason, you've now had some time to get to know the MU1. Tell us a little bit about how it performed.
I was really impressed with it, blown away, in fact. It's definitely the best sounding digital source I've had yet in the system, and not actually the most expensive either. So it's extraordinary, really.
Great. Well, that's exactly what a typical salesman would say. But you're not. You're a professional reviewer, and I guess to have somebody in your capacity endorse a product in that way is a big positive for a company. What was it about its performance that made you feel this way?
I suppose fundamentally it's the sort of solidity and depth of sound it produces. It's very unusual to find a source that can give you that sort of sense of three-dimensionality, low-level resolution, tons of detail, but presented in a really coherent, well-timed fashion. I mean, that timing is the Achilles heel of most digital systems. I think that's why they don't have the engagement that analog sources do. And this does that, and it does the detail, and it has a sort of very even, relaxed, neutral balance. It doesn't have any of the hardness or graininess you get even with some high-end digital. So it's quite extraordinary.
And I know you like your vinyl, Jason. So how did the MU1 compare?
Well, it's equally engaging. That's the most important thing. You could put on familiar records that you played a lot of times, or recordings, files if you like, and you want to keep listening to them. You want to keep playing the album after the test track, the tracks that come after the test track. The problem with being a reviewer is you end up just playing the test track all the time just because you're familiar with it. But when a product as good as this comes along, you just want to keep listening to it, which is a really good sign. It means it's engaging your interest and attention, which I find vinyl does a lot better than most digital systems.
And as we've said, clocking is really important. The unit has additional digital inputs, optical and SPDIF, both of which take advantage of the unit's own internal clock. Did you get a chance to try these?
Yeah, I did. I hooked up a CD player. Initially, I sort of just took a coax from a CD player straight to the DAC. And then I took the coax into the back of the Grimm and then came out to the same DAC, and it made a huge improvement. It really opened things up and gave it extra depth and solidity, and you could just hear what was going on much more easily, and it's made much more musical sense and was thus more enjoyable. So it is extraordinary what it can do with other sources, and presumably that is down to the clocking side of it, really, because in theory putting another thing in the chain shouldn't help, but digital audio isn't that straightforward, as we know. So in this case it definitely does help.
And what's going on inside the MU1 is it's upsampling regular Redbook CD files to 176.4 kilohertz, and then other files with frequencies above that, up to DSD256, are being downsampled to the same frequency rate, 176.4. Grimm say that after they've done extensive testing, they found 176.4 is the best frequency to offer to a DAC. And of course, that's also the maximum frequency rate that AES EBU runs to.
It initially seems very odd. I mean, I don't know any other digital company that would ever downsample something. So it's controversial, if you like. It's a very different approach, but maybe that's why the Grimm works so well. Maybe that is another key to its performance. Maybe they realize that most DACs operate really well at 176. It's a really odd figure to choose, but I guess it's 4 times the Redbook sample rate, so maybe it's something to do with that. But I can't claim to understand the technical side of it, but the results speak for themselves.
There aren't many products out there which are room core. You've got the Inuos range with the Inuos statement. You've got the merging NADAC, which has a built-in DAC. And then you have the high-end Tyco, which, like the Grimm, is a digital-only streamer. I see a real advantage for those people that own or are looking to invest in a pair of digital active speakers like the Grimm LS1s or the Key 3s, the BXTs, or the Dutch and Dutch 8Cs. You've got a Roon Core one box solution with an AES output which connects direct to the loudspeakers.
I can see the appeal of that for that select group of products, and some of those are extremely good.
Of course, there are many people out there who will want to use the MU1 in a passive system, connecting via their DAC and preamplifier. Is this how you tried the MU1?
Exactly. Yeah, I used the Grimm with my i5 Pro IDSD DAC into a regular sort of amplifier speaker system, which is probably represents the majority of systems out there. I mean, I appreciate that active speakers have a lot of advantages in digital speakers too, but the fact that the qualities of this product shine through in a more conventional system is probably more valuable than the fact that it acts as a Roon Core for those unusual speaker systems you're talking about. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see whether there was an extra advantage to be had from combining it with those particular systems.
So we've talked about performance. How did you find the functionality?
Generally, it was pretty good. I had a slight problem with the fact that if you want to change input, you have to use the button on the top, sort of long presses, short presses, turning it, which would be fine if the unit was on top of your rack, but I got a record player on top of my rack, so I had to put it in a sort of shelf and didn't have much space. So selecting inputs was a bit tricky. I did it, but it was could have been easier. And, you know, a remote control would have made that a hell of a lot easier, obviously.
I understand this is coming through a future software update. There's actually a socket on the rear of the unit which you can plug in an infrared sensor, and then you can use a remote control. And did you notice the FM aerial socket on the rear of the unit?
Yeah, that seems very strange, doesn't it? On a something as sort of technologically advanced as this in the streaming age, to include an FM aerial.
Now we've all got used to having internet radio, which you can access via the Roon app, but the quality's mediocre, and it's similar with DAB radio as well. If you're somebody who likes listening to, let's say, Radio 3 classical broadcasts on FM, then I think it's a real benefit that there's going to be a future software update to allow you to listen to FM radio through the Grimm MU1. It's
nice to have that sort of upgradability built into it.
So what about value? It's priced at 9,495. It's not an insignificant amount of money.
Well, I think if you put it in context with the competition, i.e. that is high-end digital sources or streamers with a Roon Core in it, there isn't much competition. You mentioned them earlier, and none of them are cheaper than this. In fact, most of them are more expensive. And even in the context of non-Roon based streamers, ultimately that is what it's up against, is all streamers. It's not just up against Roon streamers, is it? There's some pretty serious ones out there, and of those that I've listened to, this is the best sounding example. So while it's expensive, it is also pretty well state of the art in terms of digital source. So I think it is good value if you want great digital sound.
So Jason, I've got one final burning question, which I've been waiting to ask. Do you think the Grimm MU1 is up for an award?
I think it's definitely up for an award, Steve. Yeah, it just is the best I've heard, period, you know, which even at that price is quite an achievement. I've heard a few very expensive digital streamers and they haven't been in this league. So yes, it deserves an award, very much so.
Great. Well, Jason, thank you for taking the time to review the product. It's been great having you on the show today, and we look forward to welcoming you back in the not too distant future. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. It's been fun.
Well, if anybody would like to audition the Grimm MU1 at home, please do get in touch. All of our details are available on our website, ultimate-stream.co.uk.